5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, Brad. Round 2. We are officially live the right way on Facebook, and it actually, that countdown ended perfectly as we were going live, so nobody had to wait for the countdown. I got to re-say good words about you because now it's like an official recording. So here's the deal. Brad is one of these people that, you can meet a lot of people and you can respect them and you can admire them and you can have all sorts of feelings. But Brad's one of these guys that like you meet and you're just like, wow, that is a remarkably good dude. And consequentially become one of my favorite people, even though we don't get to talk too much, too often anymore. I feel like, we always reconnect and pick right back up where we left off. But here's a couple things to know about Brad, because you're not going to see it right away in this podcast. He leads with humility. He's humble. He's graceful in the way that he moves through life, but he also has this quiet, unassuming intensity with the level of aggressiveness that he deploys to serve people the right way and do the right things. And we'll probably get into it, but there's a story that happened at Disney World where he displayed this in magnificent ways, and we would have been lost without him. So Brad Stewart, welcome to the first time official 2mm Shift podcast. I appreciate you being here, brother.
Man, it's an honor. Thanks, Josh, for inviting me on.
Yeah. So I'm excited to catch up with you. It's been many months, I think, since we've chatted. We had a phone call. God, I don't know. It could have even been a year ago, for all I know. Time has been
about a year ago. Yeah.
Wow. Well, how have things been?
Things are good overall. Family's well, business is doing well, health as well. So can't really complain about anything, to be honest, Josh. It's looking forward to what's ahead for all of us in 2026. It's already feeling like it's time to start shifting that direction, right?
It does. I was consulting with somebody the other day. They're putting on an event in March, and they're trying to figure out how to name it and whatnot. And I put 2025 at the end of the event, not thinking that it was March. And when it was like this jarring moment of like, oh no, that has to be 2026, doesn't it? And we're we're like 8 weeks away from that. So 9 maybe. So
I don't know. It feels like the year, in business. From a business perspective, it definitely feels like, I don't know what your experience has been, but it seems like from around Thanksgiving all the way up till second week of January, business is fairly sluggish typically, which is kind of surprising. Whenever I first got into business 11 years ago, I would have thought, oh, that's like the prime time. It is a great time to be planting seeds, but overall, not a lot of traction. So it really feels like fiscal year, in a sense, kind of ends around mid-November anyways. We're just a couple of weeks away from that already. So
yeah, I think in the agency space, that's particularly true. Maybe even the B2B space altogether might trend that way. B2C, I think you're still pretty prime time.
Oh yeah, Super Bowl.
Yeah, right.
With the holiday sales and Black Friday, everything else going on in direct-to-consumer space.
Yeah, cool. So what have you been working on that's got you the most excited? I mean, dude, we've got AI has went crazy since the last time we've talked about anything AI. Business landscape is changing wildly on the digital marketing front. What has you excited or challenged or caught your attention?
Yeah, man, that is a very open question. Where do we start? For me, as you know, Josh, it always goes back to, on the business landscape for me, it always goes back to two things really in particular: is my team. How am I taking care of our team? So from an AI perspective, there's been so much discussion about AI replacing jobs and replacing people. While I definitely lean into AI's capabilities to do those things, I still continue to ask the question, okay, well, what does that actually mean? I love our team and have been so fortunate and blessed to be surrounded by some of the most incredible people on the planet. That has certainly helped our agency scale. And so what does that challenge look like from an employer perspective? If you really are leaning heavier into, hey, I love what we've got. I don't want to replace people with AI and technology. but we also have to adapt at an aggressive level, right? So there's definitely have to be, what one person fulfills individually in their own genius, their own skills, talents, gifts. How can we leverage AI in a way that is meaningful, that is still very high quality standards, that still feels relationally driven and checks all the boxes that we're looking for. And then on the other front, as an agency, obviously, time to deploy, go to market has certainly collapsed in a way that how quickly AI can speed through things and do it at such an incredible level already. Yet we're just getting started. It seems like with AI technology. So that's the way I've been thinking through it, both in opportunity and in challenge, but also some eagerness and excitement about what we're able to do with it already, but also question marks on where is that limit, right? And I think one other thing that I would throw in there is something I've thought about. This is more of a kind of a mindset, is what I hope actually might happen. This is actually Brad's brain hoping that this would happen, and not even necessarily from a business perspective, but like more so of human connection. What I hope is that there becomes so much noise with AI creating video content. Certainly, there's a lot of companies that are trying to leverage AI with automated phone systems and drip campaigns and text message, SMS text marketing. I hope there's eventually a groan in the industry to get back to human connection. That AI really floods the market, saturates the market, and it's hard to determine what's human, what's AI, and that consumers, which, that's really what's going to drive that demand, yes or no, right? Will consumers have that grown back to want to have human connection? And what does that look like in 2028, 2030? So, sorry, I gave you a lot there. It was an opening question. So it's the challenges from an employer perspective, retaining our team members that I love so dearly. From a perspective of a digital marketing agency, how do we remain competitive? And then thoughts and ideas about what the future looks like.
Yeah, I mean, they're all really important questions, right? And there's I know I've had a lot of conversation around the implications of AI in terms of like, I'll be curious your thoughts on this, and I think you already kind of leaned into it. I see everybody talking about AI from what's possible perspective, and I really think that started a couple of years ago, where people were grasping possibility, and it's continued to keep that momentum. But what nobody is talking about is the actual human relationship with AI. And there's a human psychology that has to be factored for, in my opinion. And, like the worst cascade of the future is that AI just runs the world and talks to itself the whole time, and we're all just watching the world play out as AI decides, and we have to, universal basic incomes and all of those things. Or there's a pause where there's a real relationship, and AI realizes, quote unquote, realizes, right, that the industry has to halt or pause for humans to catch up with that relationship, so to speak. And what that looks like in my mind is exactly what you're talking about, is like coming back to that human connection, because lifeless information and unless it can really create experiences, which it can with music right now, which is wild. That's probably the best example of like how far AI can go to just wipe out an industry. It's like exceptional at that, where it's not as good at writing as it is doing music, kind of thing. But I'm curious, sort of your thoughts on, and maybe even in particular, what moves you're making, accounting for that, because I think that human connection thing is 100% the X factor in how this goes.
Yeah, so I think the way I would answer that question would be, so let me ask a follow-up question to make sure I'm kind of qualifying this a little bit. Do you mean how we are leveraging AI to keep the human connection, or leverage it like it's human connection? Is that a way you would think about it?
I mean, I probably didn't ask the question in a specific enough way. It was more thought. Yes, maybe that, if you have some insights, but also in terms of how you're keeping, because I know you're gonna fight for your team until the very end. If there even was an end, you wouldn't allow it to be an end, right?
Right.
So like how you're playing that landscape, knowing all of the different market conditions, right? Because like here's one thing just to maybe
Yeah.
clarify a little bit better the thought. You you've always I mean, like I can't talk to you for more than 2 sentences without you talking about the admiration you have for your team, right? For years that's been true, and that's awesome. It's super admirable. So I know you're going to fight for it, but now you're up against, you know, potential market conditions where perceived value on the same sort of output is now at a much lower cost to produce. So your competitive landscape doesn't require all that overhead. So like, are you in the mindset of do go 10x so the same team produces at a higher level, or are you augmenting in some other way? Are you shifting the marketing proposition to go, look, this is real human jobs, you know, local
Yeah.
impact, all that kind of stuff? I
Yeah.
guess just what are your thoughts?
No, that's great. No, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking through. That's exactly how we're preparing as a company, as an agency. Is how do we basically, you know, I think I even alluded to it earlier, that like that 1-to-1 ratio historically of, you know, a graphic designer, one of our graphic designers, or content writers, or strategists, all the different categories of people that we have. You know, it definitely has to scale, and it has to scale in a way that AI is fully leveraged in a way that it can be, but also mitigating any kind of stress or distress, right, on one person handling so many different things, and also from a quality assurance perspective, and keeping in mind the uniqueness of the customer that we're serving and their target audience, the application of that. But ultimately, from 30,000 feet from the Eagle's Nest view, it's definitely that, Josh. It's we don't have a choice except for to scale. But scaling has a couple of different layers for us. A big part of what has made us successful are the relationships that we have with customers. So, you know, I think you know this, Josh. We've not built our agency to scale it really quickly, then to sell it off to private equity firms or et cetera. It's been a gradual, healthy scalability. So that's both the challenge in both layers, right? Externally, we do have to scale in terms of speed, in terms of scaling revenue, so that we are more diversified and mitigating against risk. Where, you know, I think I've shared this with you. It's so rare we lose a customer. We don't even keep up with churn, which is a KPI that many agencies do keep up with. You know, they want to know average lifetime value, but also the lifetime of the customer duration. And a lot of agencies out there are 9 months on average, and that blows my mind. We've got customers who've been with us even when we really weren't good at what we did a decade ago, right? And so it's how do we think through that in this new age, this new era that we're embarking on? You're exactly right. I mean, the challenge is that when AI can pretty much do a fully sophisticated research and development, create all the content, have a lot of human factors in it, humanizing the content, checking a lot of boxes, and deploying a website in such a short time. I know there's figures out there of like 15 minutes. I think it's probably more realistic for a couple of hours to really do a thorough job in quality assurance. You know, when historically we were winning a lot of gigs over the years because we could do all that in 30 days, when a lot of agencies were taking 6+ months, right? And so definitely time is collapsing on it. So it's that challenge. It's almost a race to how fast you can go, but also all the internal factors and making sure that we remain a workplace that people really have fulfillment in what they do. So we're trying to have fun with AI. It's not really a stressful or distressed thing inside of our company, cultural wise. You know, I know there's obviously we a lot of us seen, what was it, Fiverr, the Fiverr CEO that put that out several months ago, right? Pretty much telling everyone, this is not just you trying to protect your job. This is you finding a way to scale yourself or go find other skills, because it's all being disrupted. So I don't know. I haven't quite yet subscribed to the idea. I may be in the minority on this. I've seen so far what AI can do. I've heard what AI is going to be able to do. I have fun with leveraging a lot of AI to help my brain bandwidth and to be as sharp as possible in outputs and things of that nature. I haven't quite yet subscribed to the idea that the entire human race is going to shift in such a momentous way that AI is going to have a full blown takeover. Right? I think it's capable. I've heard all the doomsday theories, and I wouldn't say that they're all that wrong. Right? I would also just state that based on what I've also seen from consumers, I've seen some very odd behaviors from consumer adoption in some ways. And I don't even just mean like people who haven't adopted or refused to adopt AI. I more so mean there are certain applications that are very favorable that a lot of consumers are enjoying with AI. There are some others, especially when it comes to, maybe a good example would be we've deployed some chatbots with AI. And there are certain demographics around the country and certain niches around the country that people absolutely refuse, or at least the percentage of people actually using it in a customer service experience type of mechanism is being rejected in a big way. There are a lot of ways that AI is helping collapse time frames, save brain energy, all those things, but there are consumer adoption in some of these ways. It's interesting, right? I'm seeing both sides of the coin kind of play out. And I do think that it'll be interesting to see what that looks like in the next 18 months. I think that's going to determine a lot trends wise.
Yeah, I think we're right on that gap, and I've seen a lot of the same things. I've been on this fence where it's like AI has this possibility, and then it's, we go on like I've had Roy Josfolk on a couple of times, and he's really awesomely passionate about the AI future and like all the things that are going to happen, and we have this sort of like respectful, curiosity-based disagreement on maybe how that plays out. And my core like thesis on it is exactly what you just said. Like, you can't have if we're judging it by what's possible with AI, I think we're missing a big piece of that component, and that human interaction piece is huge, because what AI can't do what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
Right. Like in like, we can recall memories that we've had. We can recall places in the world we've been together. We can probably, if we thought about it enough, we'd know what food we ate, right? Like AI can't it has no context for any of that. Now, like 20 years from now, and like a new generation turns over, maybe that's a different story, right? But at the moment, there's so much that AI can't account for in terms of experience that so it can't convey that if it doesn't have that, right? So like, how does your content get influenced? It's like, well, feed it the context, but there's never, like, I don't know if you've had this experience. I've never put anything into a large language model chat and got out a true representation of like even if I take a transcript and rewrite it, I don't get a true representation of everything that I packed into that thing without a ton of extra work, of which I might as well have just published the thing that I did with the transcript, right? Like, because that had,
yeah.
So I don't know if you've had that same experience where it's like, well, I think AI can do all this, but you get to that top 10% of finishing, and now you just stacked this, in some cases even more work to get the same thing done if you would have just done it to begin with.
Yeah, I've definitely had that experience. I think it's definitely missing. It's kind of like reading a 2D map versus a 3D map, or actually being on the ground, right? And certainly the models continue to get, in some ways, improvement. They're all kind of competing against each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's funny because it's, in some ways, it's like, man, they released a new model. And it's like, did that get watered down in some areas? Like that felt like it went backwards, right? And which, I think there's two layers we're going to begin to see, which is, number one, the one thing that is helping the AI companies more than anything right now, helping consumers right now, rather, people that actually use it, is so much competition and saturation in the market. That's a huge help. The moment they really start upping the ante and putting price tags on these models, the adoption of AI is going to start to slow down and fatigue out. I don't think it'll completely die, but you know what I'm saying, though. It's the reality is, best way to maybe kind of cross-reference this, and I know this is a technical analogy, but we're recognizing just how finite of a company Google actually is in this season, because AI content is being produced at such a massive volume that Google themselves is having to get increasingly picky and strict and restrictive on having to scan all this content on the internet and decide, does it even belong in indexing anymore, right? We've been talking about this for a couple of years now, 18 months or so. And when you consider how large of a company Google is, and we're recognizing their finite resources, now think over towards AI and how much machine power that it's requiring. And as the AI model gets smarter and smarter, if it is going to consider all of these variations, right, to try to really dial in the content, to try to deliver on what you're talking about, Josh, what the output is, and does that actually land or doesn't it? All those considerations takes more computing power. So I don't want to leapfrog here, but I will state that I don't know that we'll really see the full capacity of AI and what its real potential is until quantum computing starts to really enter in. I think for those that are concerned about AI, I think the real weapon people should be much more concerned about, and this is not like a fear-mongering, statement that I'm making, but if you're concerned about AI, the real factor, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, read, and heard and absorbed, is when you merge quantum computing with AI, where now AI has so much more power and capability to consider variations. One quick example of that is, like right now, if I really want a very nice, sophisticated output, I either have to create, an MCP server environment and get all these sophisticated systems put together, and that's fun and cool, but that's not what 99% of people are going to be able to do or want to do. So then if you even subscribe to even kind of mid-tier level of subscription to try to get into a better model, it's still increasingly getting slower now. Like, I feel like AI might even be, this is theory, not based on things I've read, but what I've experienced. AI is starting to actually slow down in terms of how quickly it can get you a very high quality output, because it's starting to seem like AI is getting smarter, but the technology doesn't quite exist to quickly absorb all that, consider all options, and then give a very high quality output. Has that been your experience, Josh? And does that make sense?
Yeah, it's definitely on the like cloud-based systems, ChatGPT and whatnot. It's definitely been it's an up and down experience with it. In terms of layering all the things together, I think that we're probably at a net positive for, like, it depends on the task, but let's say like writing content. We're probably at a net positive for like a better resource than we had with like iWriter back in the day, right? Where
Oh yeah, there is no doubt.
Getting all the spun content and all the stuff.
No doubt.
Even with speed constraints and contextual relevance, and in fact, I was just doing I'm building a prompt right now that's on all of the different layers of semantic relevance in scoring and in being able to restructure content based on that and navigate through topical maps and all of the crazy stuff. And as I'm looking at that, there is a significant amount of context to pull apart. I think when we're just talking about it using language as a large language model, it's very it's probably as good as it ever needs to be, right? So like if it gets better, it's where does it get better in layering in these different things. So like one of the things that I don't know if I'm getting off track from the question that you asked, or if I answered that anyway. But one of the things that I'm seeing that I'm really curious about and interested in is on the video side, because video is the maximum amount of digital communication that we can have, because it
for sure,
language is there, music is there.
That's the human connection, right?
Yeah.
If there's any application of AI, how can it do with videos? For sure. Yeah.
And what's so interesting is it can do it. It can hit all of the layers magically with audio. I literally started listening to an AI song. One of the podcasters that I listened to started producing some music, and like I'm in love with that. And I'm going, there's a weird cognitive thing happening with me where I'm like, wait, you can't go see this band live. Like there's no art, it just a great song. And I'm like, this hits everything. And they just did somebody just did a study. I don't remember who, but they basically said that AI music is imperceptible to reality at this point from any average person. Video, however, although, I mean, it's advancing wildly, but like so many layers have to come together in the right way. Even people who study to do video and master it at the highest level screw it up sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So like, that's the pinnacle to me. And when can we layer all those things together? It can intellectualize it on the LLM, right? It can kind of explain like, here's how you might do it. But I've spent a ton of time going through story frameworks with ChatGPT, going through layering emotional connectivity and really like learning the dynamics. And it is still, you still have this problem. And I think that they'll start solving this by having like more specific LLMs that are geared in a particular way. But I've always explained this, right? Like something like ChatGPT is trained on the internet. The internet is the average person's input into the collective documented consciousness in the world, which means most of its context is the average. Well, if you go back to George Carlin's joke, right? Like think about how dumb the average person is and realize that half of them are even dumber than that, right? And it's not to judge anybody or put them down, but like the whole point is even in trying to focus it in these like, really specific layers, you're still getting these average inputs back into it. So it's like, well, here's how you create the emotional connectivity. And it's like this sort of like throwaway sentence that you'd find better information on a 5-minute YouTube video of a person explaining it, because it understands the concept, but it doesn't understand how far you want to go with it. So
yeah, no, it's great stuff, Josh. I agree. And I think that human spirit connection part of it. I think it's the psychology of it as well. So one thing that should make a difference with, AI video technology, if it can be truly a replacement for that human connector, even at 70% of what we would experience, if I was going to put a percentage on it, I think it's the tonality of it too. You can feed in the scripts, and certainly there's AI technology where you can, obviously it's been around for a little while. You know about it, Josh. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're very interested in AI, Josh is probably one of the top 1% on the planet when it comes to AI implementation and processes and systems. This guy is legit. So
I appreciate that, but that's probably less true today than it was 2 years ago. But I appreciate the sentiment either way.
But the point of it is that human factor. It's like, I think what, if I can say it this way, when it comes to people like you and I, and a lot of people out there, kind of that shiny object syndrome is part of it. But what I would state is often with AI, we can kind of look at it on the surface level, even if we dive in deep. But what I'm stating is that take AI video as an example, right? And this is probably one of the most profound, most exciting features that AI is getting really good at, right? We can agree to that. But when you finally get into the layers of it, and let's just go further downstream, you deploy those videos, you deploy them in ads, you deploy them in websites, you deploy them in ways that you actually are trying to apply them for, in this case, I'm talking more of an agency model, but let's just say that you're doing that for advertisements. What will actually be the equation of that? In other words, will you get conversions from it long term? And I think there are ingredients in which I think AI will be functional in this, not necessarily excellent at it, which is how will you enter in the psychology of it? You think about it this way, when you're talking authoritatively on a given subject, kind of positioning yourself as the expert. So in this case, in the video, you have a customer and you're wanting them to be positioned as the expert. Does it land, right? Like with AI technology versus knowing like that, like, I don't think that was AI. It was much more raw, but I could tell they were genuine about it. And it's that human connection part of it, right? Like, you know how this is, Josh, even right now, obviously you and I have an eye for it, but I don't think it's just the people that are doing this every day. I think a lot of people now, it's to a point now to where there's a lot more people questioning, was that real or was that AI already?
Yeah.
For that to already be a consumer expectation or something that they're, taking a look at, or judging it, right, and trying to understand if that was real or not, that's a pretty telltale sign, right? That it's going to have to be really solid. It's going to have to be from functional to that more of that excellent mark, in my opinion, in most applications for it to really translate. I think a lot of the, a lot of the AI videos you see out there right now, obviously, I don't even know how to reference it, but the gorilla and all the things that's going out. Everyone thinks those are absolutely hilarious, and it's got a lot of engagement on that content, right? So many likes, shares, comments, like, people doing all of that. That does not mean that that's actually equating to any kind of revenue generated. It's just hilarious. It's comical. And so when you really start to apply this, especially in any kind of serious business application, I still think we're pretty far off from that. And that's a dangerous statement to make, how fast AI is progressing. But when I say that, I mean that we're probably 3+ years away from it really having any kind of meaningful revenue. And there's a lot of check boxes that AI and those that are engineering and prompting and doing these kind of workflows, there's a lot to work on there. I think that would be my observation of it. But to your point, it's incredible how quickly things are progressing. There's no doubt. And videos certainly are the most interesting in my mind. That is absolutely the most interesting as far as marketing goes. There's also the benefit with AI with, can it do better research and development on medicine and health and, biohacking, and how can it actually improve human lives? I think there's some really exciting opportunities there, that AI has a much better shot at in due time to help us collapse timeframes to find better ways to improve human nature and human life, right? But on the marketing side, I think there's that psychology factor that it still falls flat from where we are going to need to be for it to be impactful on a business front.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what you're touching on is something that is part of that conversation that isn't being had properly. And it really comes down to one word, which is trust. And I've talked about this in the past. The only people who are really evaluating whether content is AI or not are the people that are using AI, right? The rest of the world is pretty oblivious to it.
Yes. Unless it's got emojis now, right? Yeah. Unless there's emojis all over the content.
Yeah, right. It is becoming more pervasive, and people are becoming more aware as to what to look for. And I think that that's good in a couple of ways. One, the people who are using AI, being the ones evaluating it, are the ones that are pushing it to the edge to be as good as it can be, right? So I think that that's, we'll see if that's a net positive or not. It depends on, whether we're on the Terminator timeline or, something a little better. But the you brought up a couple of things there that triggered some thoughts. This idea of trust is a massive one because there is a large gap between attention and intention. And that's one of the things we talk about all the time in marketing. I've talked about it for years, right? Like, we have to close the gap between interest and intent. Well, the gap from attention to interest is already big enough. So when you've got a Yeti video that's just fun, that doesn't have even interest levels. It can in marketing, it can create interest levels, but now how does that, attention translate into actual intention? There's some gaps to solve there. And I think that really comes down to, it's, clearly we talk about, this is part of what I'm talking about. Like, you can't even have the conversation without AI without it being like overarched by what's possible. Versus the reality of it. And the reality of it is it's still all human driven. It still requires a human brain to guide it in the ways that it needs to be guided to evaluate these things. So on its own, can it get there? I mean, I've done these AI Yeti videos, and you look at it and you go, well, crap, I can create an N8N automation that'll whip these off in minutes. But then you go watch the output and you're like, oh, the tonality sucks. That, like, there's nothing punchy in the copy, and like, yeah, the video is cool. It's like, it's cool. You could, but like, there's these things that just absolutely fall off. So you end up spending a half hour, 45 minutes on each of those videos
Yeah.
to like punch those things up. And you're like, well, crap, I could have just like recorded a voiceover or
Yeah.
like paid for a voiceover and waited for a day. I'd have less of my time into it. And it would potentially be making money fast. Like there's these weird trade-offs that you have to make when you're on that final 15% of the product that it just doesn't do on its own. And if you look at VO3, it's amazing, right? Like the visuals and the way that it's building video and whatnot is out of control and out of this world. Google has the best, better than 11 Labs, better than anybody. Google has the best voice stuff there is, and you see those videos come out and it still falls flat. Tonality doesn't peak for the character, it doesn't embody, and there's still just this 15% gap there to get it really bold and meaningful. And you have to have that human piece of it to go like, wait, I should actually switch the voice of the villain with the voice of the hero, and that would totally fix the whole thing.
Sure.
AI cannot do that, right? Like it can't, there's nothing that I have access to at a public level that I know can actually sort that out right now in real time. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
I agree.
So I think trust is a big thing there, and that's really the gap that they have to close is how trust, it's getting there. I mean, there's some things. One other thing you mentioned that I just wanted to touch on, because I was just listening to the Moonshots podcast this morning out on my walk. And apart from medical and everything, you know what they're predicting to be one of the more like we're verging the horizon of being able to do this at a higher level is actual nanobots that work at a subatomic quantum physics level. And they said with not very many years of advancement, you should be able to throw a nanobot on the ground and have it say like, make me broccoli. And it'll go pull the natural resources from the ground.
Oh my goodness.
Broccoli.
What in the world?
Yeah. So like, it's like the potential is crazy. So like there it is again, back to potential. So like, where do we end up with this 15% gap on broccoli where it actually becomes, you know, nuclear? This is actually one of the big, I'm rambling now. You're triggering all
no, you're good. You're good.
But one of the, I forget the guy's name. If somebody said it, I would know it immediately. But early on, I mean, a year and a half ago, he was talking about this on a podcast. He said, if AI is going to destroy the world, it's not because of some, you know, like nuclear crazy whatever. It's going to be because somebody asks it to recreate a strawberry, and it hasn't yet learned the implication at a molecular level on how to not split an atom by accident, right? And like that's where they're heading with these nanobots and all of that kind of stuff, which is, it's pretty wild to think about. I think they're a little, I think it's easy to get in the AI bubble and get so wrapped up in possibility that you start just assuming things are a lot closer than they are. But anyways, that was fascinating this morning. I thought
that is fascinating, you know, and it's like, when you put it that way, I don't think that's far fetched actually, right. You know, but I think then it goes back to what kind of power, what kind of energy, what kind of financials, what kind of, like, all these other variables that are certainly a variable of that would determine not necessarily how soon it could happen, but how soon it's feasible, right? And how can that be mass produced? And then what all does that actually disrupt to the point to where now you start looking at economic disruption across the globe at a pace you never imagined, right? To happen so quickly. So yeah, that's a lot for my brain to process, to be honest.
Yeah. So you just brought up like economic stuff. This is the one thing that I haven't heard anything that has convinced me yet. I've not heard anybody who's an actual economist or somebody who isn't so bias heavy on AI explain the real market dynamics. I've seen some people like predict some ideas, but like real markets and economies function on such a multifaceted level that I see people talk about it in a very linear way of like, well, no, there would just be, this would happen this way, and it would lower the cost to be able to get all these things. Well, like Amazon just announced again today another 16,000 people that they're laying off. I think by next year they're expecting 600,000 people to not be working. How many people like where I kind of think of an economy like a human body immune system, whether I should or shouldn't, I don't know. But the immune system can handle almost anything given enough time. But if you get bit by a rattlesnake, that poison moves too fast for your immune system to handle it, and you're probably going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like how AI is rolled out into an economy is either an absolute destruction or something that the economy can merge and adjust with. And humans are adaptable, so I'm not total like they can't adapt. However, imagine the US right now if 50% of the jobs were gone, and sure, there's new jobs that emerge and people can get, but there isn't going to be as many new jobs emerging as there are disappearing. We're literally replacing human labor force. Every other revolution has been a tool, right? The wheel, fire, being able to mold steel and all, computers. These have all been tools for humans to operate more. This is the first time where things can take over the operation, not just revolutionize the method. So, if the market isn't there to buy the things, even if the things get cheaper, like there has to be there's no possible way that you don't get to that point where you have to go, well, wait, fine, like universal basic income comes in and people are subsidized and now they're buying the things that are cheaper, but like that seems to me like a complete scaling down of an economy in every way, shape, or form, and a limitation on possibility for people to like actually build their dreams and goals and all of these things. They can explore it in a more micro way, but like, to me, that seems like the death of the, $100 million, $1 billion businesses, unless you own an AI and you're able to deploy it within that thing. So now the whole economy shifts to this one bubble of wealth. I haven't heard anybody talk about it in an actual, like, really intelligent way that convinces me that there is a natural path for the economy to boom the way that some people say. Elon Musk is like, economy is going to boom bigger than ever. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it when the labor force, which is how people get money, like the only thing that I can see, sorry, I'm rambling again, but the only thing I can see is like, if the government structures in a way where GDP is able to affect the rest of the world, and that comes back in the form of some type of revenue, just like the Arabian countries do, where that goes back to the citizens in a certain way. I mean, that's why citizens of Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Qatar and whatnot. That's why there's like so much wealth there, is that a lot of that funnels back. I suppose that's as reasonable of an answer as I've gotten, is that you'd go that route with the structure, tax-based returns to the people. But
no, I think, there's something that you kind of conveyed a little bit that I want to ask you this curious question. If AI is able to do like the kind of takeover, right, that is, a lot of people that really study AI are extremely concerned. I mean, heck, there was seemingly that gathering of some of the smartest brains and IQ people on the globe. What was that, about 24 months ago? Mm-hmm. Where you remember that gathering they did? Elon was trying to like halt AI or put some limits on AI development, right? I don't know if that was real or if that was just put out there. But my point that I was going to convey is how much of it actually will be because we, the human race, let's just make it a little bit less toxic in this way. How much consumers enabled AI to actually do the takeover because we weren't fully aware. Not that we're ever fully aware. There was not enough awareness, is the better way to say it. The best analogy is this, right? Amazon's a great example of this. Amazon has been notorious for replacing jobs left and right with technology well prior to the breakthrough we've seen in AI the last year.
For sure.
And yet, why is it that consumers go there? And the flat answer from a lot of people will be like, well, I like fast shipping. Yeah, Amazon disrupted the market. Now everyone has to offer free shipping and it's got to go fast, right? But then the other part of it is because AI was able to say, I'm sorry, because Amazon was able to save so much on labor cost. I know you've probably experienced this with some of your customers over the years. Amazon is pretty much 95% in the corner of the consumer and not at all in favor of the people that actually sell on this platform.
For sure.
If you order something from Amazon, first of all, it's very rare that your order gets wrong. So that's a big check box in the eyes of consumers. If I order something, I can expect it to hit my doorstep, right? That's a huge factor. So consumers like that. And then if I order something and for any reason, I just want to take it back. Like, I don't like it. I regretted my purchase. It doesn't matter what the reason is. You can call Amazon, and in a reasonable time frame, they will put the money back in your account, and in some cases, let you keep the product, not even have to return it. And so they've because Amazon has saved so much on collapsing jobs and having the use of technology. It's almost a genius model if you really think about it, what Amazon's done with that, because they basically have taken that surplus of dollars they've saved and made sure that the customer experience is as top notch as they can possibly give it, right? But if you think about it, it's kind of a rug pull, or maybe that's not the best way to say it, but that's the analogy I'm using here is, but ultimately, from the eagle's nest, it is the seed of our possible destruction in terms of long term, where Amazon was one of those pioneer companies that really appealed to the consumer, but consumers didn't consider what that actually could look like long term, and more so generations, right?
Yep.
So what we're doing today with consumerism in these certain areas and aspects and facets, long term, as that model continues to grow and scale and jobs descale or taken away completely, at some point do we as a population across the globe, but even here in America, do we become more sensitive and aware of that, or are we already at a point of no return, or is that even a thing, right? Do we ever slow down enough to think about that, or does it just continue to happen? I mean, I have my own ideas about that, but I'm posing that question to you, Josh.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of implications to what you're talking about. One of the first things that came to mind when you were saying it is I've talked about this for years. In the micro view, something like serving your stockholders makes perfect sense. In the macro, I think it is the actual dark side of capitalism, and it doesn't factor for long-term potentials because of that need to constant exponential growth and serve stockholders. And that's largely why Amazon has done all the stuff they've done, right? Is like continue to improve that for stockholders, which is not the same as improving it for the people, even though there's crossover. So I think that the implications you're talking about replicate far beyond just business, because one thing that I think AI has a lot of us doing is actually thinking about potential futures in a way that we've never thought about it before, because everything else felt linear, and now there's this kind of ambiguity on what might happen. And I think if everybody was factoring for that, we wouldn't be as in much of a hurry to get to the possibility. But I think the possibility is just hypnotic, right? Like it's like I've never liked, I'm not a big horror movie fan, but it's like that movie The Ring, right? Like if it's on the TV, like you're stuck on it. I didn't actually watch that movie, so that might not be a good analogy. I shouldn't use things I'm not that intimately familiar with. But the thing that I think about is there's many layers to this. So there's like the business implication, which is meaningful to say the least. Like it's a gigantic impact in the business landscape. But like, what happens if people aren't working? What do they put their time and attention on? Well, now you still have to have, right now, like at a government or world level, the amount of effort being put into capture people's attention and direct that in a particular way, even while they're distracted by something like a job and actually supporting their family and all of that, is massive, and it's massively effective. What happens when those people don't have anything else to focus on? Where does that turn into, like you could imagine the most extreme ends of any society, not just American society. Suddenly they've got nothing else to do, so they start to position their will and their power in a certain way that then topples another like the implications just start to go. And I'm not
at
even
all layers.
Yeah,
at
I'm
every
not even
layer.
doing a good or bad judgment. It's literally just like
Right.
cause and effect.
Human nature too, taking over.
Now also cascade that on a health perspective, cascade that on how it impacts personal relationships. Like where real life happens is, like in marketing, we always talk about it, like the magic 3 pillars is health, wealth, and relationships, right? Like everything buckets under those. So everything cascades in shifts and moves there. And a lot of people just think about it like, well, this is how the business will work. This is how the economy works. But like, what's the implication of that economy working that way? Like if you only see opportunity, that's great. But like, there's more than just opportunity that's happening. So I think that mindset and that lens, like we really have to, if the future is that sort of, is that sort of unclear, then you have to start layering different perspectives and mindsets to factor that. So like, fine, here's the opportunistic vision. What's the pessimistic vision? What's the
or just reality,
holistic vision, or what, like you have to be able to shift out of that locked perspective to really contemplate the landscape. And I can tell you, people right now have this answer. Like I was listening to it on the Moonshot podcast. These guys are like, well, just go ask AI. And like 9 times out of 10, you're just going to do what it says. And I'm like, I'm in AI all day long. And that's never true. Like it's just never true. People are just hypnotized by the possibility. So you can't ask AI to factor for this future at all because it doesn't have an understanding of it. And in the way people are talking about it is feeding it information that's totally biased in an opportunistic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. I think when we had all of the when the globe pretty much shut down 5 years ago, I think that was a very small indicator of what that futuristic world might look like. And again, not to convey super negative energy, but the reality was there was just as much mental health challenges with the isolation that people were experiencing. And look, there's variables there. Could people get out? Could they not get out? Were they in fear? Were they not in fear? I get all of that. But the reality is that while there were, I hate to say this because I know this is kind of sensitive. There were moments in that season for me that it was nice to slow down. Like it felt like almost a reset on life to a degree. It's like getting back to the values that actually matter most when the noise finally dies down. There were some beautiful moments, but I also know, and look, that I don't want that to sound insensitive with people who lost family members and all of that. I get all that. I'm just talking about from a human nature perspective, right? But then there was the other side of the token for so many that really needed community. They really needed human touch point, right? And collaboration and just talking to someone on the phone wasn't quite enough. Like they needed to be in the same room and even see family, but also friends and be out in the community. And when you lose that due to isolation, so because I kind of my takeaway from what you were saying there, Josh, is when people become idle, right? When the job force is greatly reduced and there's really not like a plan B or a plan C now, you have more people that become idle. Typically speaking, human nature doesn't do very well with being idle, right? And that's whenever mental health really starts to crumble. And we've seen hints of that when the world shut down 5 years ago, right? And there was a lot more awareness starting to come about with that. And yes, things got busy again and picked up again, and it feels like those days were yesterday and yet so long ago in the same way. But I think there's a lot of I feel like there has to be almost a revival or awakening in people's mindsets of what are we on track for here, and what are the fact, you brought up something very interesting that I haven't even considered. The fact that economists aren't even really conveying much on all this, probably because there are too many different variations of outcomes for them to even really model this up. But there has to be at some point a rise in awareness on the track that we are on for consumers possibly to become more sensitive or aware. I think waiting for the government or the globe of people that are in leadership for us to wait for that kind of intervention, I think it's always going to that's going to come too late.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if there would be intervention, if I'm being honest. There's just too much corruption the further north you go in terms of who's in certain pocketbooks and back pockets and that sort of thing, right? On if they're actually going to slow this thing down. I don't think they're going to slow it down, to be honest. I think there's also the concern that, okay, well, if you slow it down long term, people are thinking more defensively in terms of, weaponization of AI and what countries are leading in that particular race and all that sort of thing. But so I don't know. In some ways, it feels like it's completely out of our control. But if we assume that everything's completely out of our control, then we're on the same track either way, right? So kind of goes back to that very profound principle of control what you can control. I would say that there's awareness about companies that are completely taking exchanging people for AI in a way that feels devaluing the human race or that sort of thing. And look, I'm guilty of it too. So I'm not saying like this is an anti-Amazon. We have an Amazon is on a subscription for us too. But the idea is, what are we willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to sacrifice to see better awareness, right? And can I even make a difference if I'm in the very small minority of people that's even aware of that? Does that make sense? I kind of rabbit hole there, but
Yep.
that's what's on my brain.
It's a really interesting thing to contemplate, because it's truly navigating new waters, right? This is the new equivalent to.
There's no playbook for this, really.
No. This is the new equivalent to Magellan sailing around the world, and or Christopher Columbus. Not to I know he's controversial these days, but like discovering new lands. This is our version of that, is in this tech sort of sea of tech, right? And it's definitely exciting on one hand, and like you can't, as much as I talked about like maybe painted the idea of like being too opportunistic as a negative, like you still actually have to play the opportunistic game, because that's life. And there's back to what you were saying with the people from 5 years ago and all of the challenges and whatnot. If AI, here's the doom. I'll say this definitively, knowing that I might be wrong, as I always tried to do. But if AI eliminates the ability for humans to find meaningful purpose, it's done. Like that is the doomsday scenario in my mind.
It's not like the weaponization of like people getting blown up. It's that. Yeah. It's us crumbling as a society. That is the much bigger threat.
And so people go like, well, find new purpose with your family, or find new purpose with whatever. And it's like those things were there. The reason that like if you go, there's a lot of talk right now in different circles on the impact of and I don't want to go like too far down this road to make it to paint it in a bad light or a good light. It's just, this is the conversation I'm hearing. I'm not trying to weigh in on like firm opinions, but
sure.
There's a lot of conversation right now on how damaging the sort of extreme side of feminism has been, as well as destructing the sort of nuclear family. And in the arguments that people present have come down to traditional gender roles, because a man in a family setting had a certain set of characteristics and responsibilities to the micro ecosphere of the family, and a woman had a different set of skills that brought the whole thing together and made it this viable environment for creating new life and expanding life and experiences and teaching and all of these different layers. And the destruction of that, the arguments that they make is that that has cascaded into a lot of men growing up not being able to find any purpose because there's, you know, on the sort of like counter feminist argument is that like females, many females have taken on such masculine roles inside of this sort of like opportunistic growth society, and they've done it through like, you know, why should we be oppressed? And again, I'm not here to make judgments on these things. This is just the arguments. And because of that, they've shifted the actual thing. Like they've got such masculine energy in the way that they approach the world and attack the world. They've lost the feminine, motherly side of it. So even if you have, you know, what might be perceived as a power couple, where it's like a masculine sort of a higher level of masculine energy in a female, and then a man that's matching that, there is none of that female energy or feminine energy that's actually supporting. So like that's already starting to crack within the society. What happens if AI diminishes all of that for everybody? Is it back to a place where it's actually like, wow, we can rediscover these more natural roles? Now, and I'm not even saying that we should. I don't know, you know, like probably I can have a different conversation on it. I'm just trying to not trigger anybody. But the you know, do we come back to a place, because there was a segment of the population during the whole shutdown of everything that went back and found nature and found people, and they found connecting within their communities again as they were able to, and they found health, and they found, like, a lot of people found a lot of good things. And I think our economy today is actually still feeling ripple effects of that, where habits changed wildly, markets changed wildly based on that time. So like that could be a better outcome, but I'm confused when we start to kill purpose, where that all lines in. So
yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting dynamics there. You know, so then I think it comes out to what ifs, right? So what if things actually got better? Surprisingly, like it blew our minds that, you know, again,
it's what we needed.
Dating back 5 years ago, like, don't get me wrong, man. I wish we could get back to that. Now, don't get me wrong, like there were certainly challenges across the board, and that's even not being sensitive at all to what happened with why the shutdown even was created. But my point of it is that that's a what if factor, right? And so, what are we willing to gamble or risk as a society to find out one way or the other, right? And then, so then it's the stack, right? There's no doubt that it's not all black and white. It's just not, and there's no way for us to even forecast that or predict that. There would definitely and absolutely be, it would definitely flatten the playing field, right? It would definitely do a lot of different things. And don't get me wrong, man. If I say this very carefully, right? Like, for me, purpose is in how can I make a difference in other people's lives, but also it's how do I fill my tank back up, and how my tank is filled back up. But majority of that certainly is my time and experience and milestones and memories being created with my family. Sure. You know, you think about this on why most entrepreneurs get started. I would presume that most entrepreneurs are after, you know, a financial well-being that hopefully unpredictably provides a lifestyle that then they can go do the thing they actually want to go do, right? And to them, that's probably most of purpose. That's not everyone. Some are on a completely different climb, right? Some people, that's not the same values, and that's fine. But my point of it is that I don't know. It's hard to see it, right? It's really hard to imagine it. Nothing is black and white. There are so many different variables. But, you know, let's go back to that same situation, right? If I'm able to spend a lot more time with my family, and I'm not working 40 plus hours a week, I'm working more like 20, 25 hours a week. But what about the marginal difference? Because the reality is everything on this planet is finite. Nothing is infinite. Yep. Financials are finite. Treasures are finite. Time is finite. Everything resources is finite. So what are the marginal differences? Whoever is gaining, or whatever resource is gaining, something else is losing in most all scenarios of physics and science, right? Well, something is gaining, something is losing. And in those days, right, 5 years ago, there was a lot of negative margin just as well as it was plus margin in my own life, right? There were just at the same time as I had a beautiful family to go and splurge watching Star Wars and all the Marvel movies and just hanging out, playing board games, such a beautiful season of life. On the same token, there were people that were very isolated. You know, obviously there's some really dark stats when it comes to people who didn't have that same kind of environment that I was blessed to have, right? And fortunate to have in that season. So, and then certainly the loss of life, but that's a different category, right? When we're talking about this particular subject. So when you fast forward, I just think there would have to be a lot, there would be a lot of evolving, and it's like, how do we, so I think ultimately, Josh, we've been talking for about an hour right now. It just seems like human connection truly is the X factor in literally everything that we're talking about. Like getting back to that human connection, and what does our world look like in 2030, 5 years from now, 4 years now, getting close to, and what does it look like for the next generation? I think would be a good study would be those the generations coming into adulthood now, right? I think that would be an interesting study if it could be done, right, on those that are coming into adulthood, not just those that are turning 18, but those that are actually entering into the workforce for the first time, those that are perhaps going to college, which that's a whole other interesting asterisk, right, with college. But my point of it is what is their view? What's their take? What did they consider to be the most value to them? What does purpose actually look like? Do they even ask that question, right? You think about, the boomers, and then, the generations down, and then our generation, right? It's like we consider purpose to be, and purpose is important, obviously. But how much of that question truly is getting asked versus what really is the question is, how am I being fulfilled, and how is my tank being filled back up? It's really more of, I say it this way, it's a KPI element. How filled up is my tank? In other words, how happy am I?
Yeah.
Not so much of I need purpose to feel like I'm making a difference. It's honestly more of like, how happy am I? How much joy do I have? And I think if you go back to this generation's entering the workforce for the first time, growing families for the first time, if they are, like, what values, where are their values on average? And I think that will probably end up determining a lot of what the next 20 years looks like, how this thing plays out.
I agree. And I think that's that's the best argument that I've heard for any of this stuff on the future of AI is this next emerging generation. It's all they're going to know. So like we're coming at it with the perspective of having, past knowledge of norms. What's the new norm? And, I think you asked a fair question, and it's not one that I've asked properly. So I appreciate that. It essentially, how does the landscape of what purpose means shift, and even what joy means shift? Because it's one of the things I've been watching with my son. He's 21 now, and I know people around him that when they were 16 and could get their license, they just didn't.
Yeah.
And like, I can't fathom.
Yes.
I cannot fathom.
That was such a milestone for us growing up, dude.
Like that was that was your day. Like
yeah.
You don't even, and I mean, we love his girlfriend to death. There's nothing wrong with her or anything. And I'm not judging her for this, but like, she's 20 and I think she just got her license.
Yeah.
So like, it's such an amazing thing to like look at and go, like I look at it and I'm going like, where's your ambition in like life?
Yes.
And like with curiosity, not with judgment. Right.
Right. I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm like, what's
filling that gap? Since you're not even crazy excited about getting your license anytime soon, like, where is your joy placed? Like, what do you enjoy doing?
And so there's a couple of things that I noticed, and it's just, it's one example, and it's in my own little micro bubble of just peering into my son's world, right? But like, one of the things that I definitely see from that place is that their social interactions trump everything.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've observed too.
And so like that's actually kind of interesting because that's sort of always been true, right? Even in past, like you went out and partied and that was part of your social interaction and whatnot. But alcohol's on a decline right now. Nightclubs are on a decline right now. So like the way the social network is it's either a much healthier form of socializing, or it's a deadened form of socializing.
That's a great observation. Yeah. It's either much deeper on much deeper layers where it's so we use the word acquaintances, right? Acquaintance versus a real friend and a genuine friend, right? But I think that's still applicable here for this generation coming up, and that's a great observation. How much of it is, you mentioned like nightclubs and going out and partying, doing all those things. Those in some ways feel so transactional, and they're not necessarily interested in the transactional. But is it because they're not interested at all? Or is it because they genuinely want to be in much more deeper connection than just casually running into acquaintances and whatnot, right? Do they? And I don't know the answer to that. That's a great observation. I think that's obviously a critical, almost black and white determination, right? Because if it is that there's not a value for relationship for the majority of this generation coming in, well, then we know where AI is going to take it, right? But if there's a genuine, deep desire for real human connection and certainly at a much more personable level, that's probably one of the top three hopes we have, frankly, if I were to really observe it that way.
There's one other thing that's coming to mind too as I'm thinking about the observation. So like Meg, my fiance, she's done photography for 25, 30 years or something. So I'll go help her sometimes on a senior photo shoot or something that she's doing. And across the board, within these short interactions, right? I'm not having deep conversations with these people within an hour-long photo shoot or anything. But across the board, I am mesmerized and impressed at how smart these kids are.
Yeah.
And it actually like admitting my own sort of feeling on it sometimes. Like sometimes I'm not actually frustrated by it, but I have this little twinge of like, do you know how much effort I put into being smart? And like here's this kid that's just like gets it better than I ever I was 35 years old before I understood this thing that kid is throwing away like it's the most basic knowledge in the world. And maybe that happens with every generation. I wouldn't have the ability to know, but with that level of intelligence and that value on their social connections, even to the point where like I see a lot of them, and I think this is part of what the whole job like hiring problem was of not being able to get enough work. A lot of them will prioritize that social piece over actually going out and getting money and providing in a certain way. And maybe that is an ushering in of the age of Aquarius or something, right? Where it's all happy vibes, and that's what they is the North Star versus I've been doing business stuff since I was in 7th grade, going around knocking doors to mow lawns, right? Like I only know this sort of like go out in the world and do something that way. And I think a lot of those kids are like, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I mean, there's two sides of the coin, right? There's the observation, and certainly the more separated generations are. I'll just say it this way, boomers could even look at this upcoming generation and the fact that most of them aren't really that excited about entering the workforce and gaining a check. And you can either look at that from a perspective of, man, we're screwed, right? This generation is lazy, all these labels, right? But then if you really observe and don't just ask them out front, because they're going to give you a surface level question or answer to your surface level question, right? Like what means most to you, right? Huh? What do you mean? But I think if you really observe it, it goes back to, again, what is their passion? What's going to fill their tank? And there's a lot of kids right now that are in college. They are not excited about graduating.
No.
They're not actually excited about entering the workforce. And this is the very generation that is, in all terms and purposes, like they're going to college for a reason to have job placement, right? They're training and being educated and all those sort of things. So, but it's like, but what are the layers underneath that maybe hasn't been explored in the best way, in the best light? And I actually have hope in this generation coming up, Josh. For a majority of them, it just feels like it's almost like, man, what's the best way to state this? It's like to us, going and earning a paycheck and making a difference in people from a monetary standpoint and financial perspective and all those sort of things. It's like we almost put too much in that tank in the eyes of this generation coming up. It's like, no, why don't we just go hang out and let's just go be friends and let's have a good time. Let's find something that is interesting to both of us, right? Whatever that looks like. And it's like they bypass the model and it doesn't compute for us, right? Now, I'm saying it's not black and white. Obviously, there's a lot of color to all that, but in some ways, that's what I've observed, actually, Josh, for the most part, of this generation coming up, and I hope that there's some real gold in that because again, it goes back to it. Whatever it is that they place value on will determine the trajectory and the pace in which AI has a positive or very negative effect on our world. It'll be based on this generation coming up, in my opinion. So
the other side of that coin, as you're talking, that I'm also going is like, that all sounds great unless it's incentivized laziness.
No, that's very fair. It's like my wife and we had relocated when we first got married to a part of East Tennessee, and dude, this was 2008, 2009 ago, and GPS had gotten really good at that point. I could not navigate myself across the city, bro. I had to have a GPS anywhere and everywhere I went. I could not get it around because GPS it didn't require me to know how to navigate anywhere. And it was the reality. I adopted the technology of GPS at that time and couldn't navigate. It's exactly the same situation, much more stronger terms though, like what that means for long term. And you're not wrong. But then there's also the idea too of doing a math problem on paper versus what we use as calculators back then that everyone said that was cheating, right? And so you fast forward, maybe it does incentivize a tokenization of laziness, but what's the other margin of that? Yeah, they become lazy. They also they're also very much happier because they're also lazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't mean that they're sitting around on the couch eating potato chips, watching TV. That's not what I mean when I say lazy. I more so mean to aspire to really work hard, to aspire to work 40, 50 hours a week. But that's not what they want to do at all. And that tokenization of, man, they're really lazy. But what's the other margin? And I don't know the answer to that, right? Well, but I completely agree. Like, there's also the others, or whatever that looks like in that category of people who doesn't give a rip about human connection. Maybe they've had a tough upbringing. Now they're not working. Now they're idle. And now we have a rise in crime, or we have a problematic financial, margin. All those things are also true. And I don't know that we ever get away from that. I think that we'll always have gaps and margins. But again, it goes back to what I was saying, because at the end of the day, everything is finite. When someone is winning, someone else is losing. It's just the nature of our world. We are a finite human.
Well, it comes back to that concept of like energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed, right? So, totally get what you're saying there. So a couple of things. One, it's funny to hear you talk about the navigation, and I'm thinking about how you toured me around the entire world at Epcot effortlessly while managing 3 different factions of groups and tour guiding and stuff. But the other thing, as you're saying all this, like, for the AI sort of world that people keep painting, it actually requires a society that has a value structure like that for it to be meaningful. Because if it's going to replace if it's going to replace the work that is somehow consciously or subconsciously weighed against your ability to be happy within your social, vibe, if you will, then something has to lift that weight in order to provide the atmosphere for you to do that. Because otherwise, it's a post-apocalyptic world, right?
That's
Without
right.
That's the alternative. So,
Mm-hmm.
like that actually lines up perfectly with where AI would have to be to serve that world. There's still things to figure out economically, and a lot of unanswered questions there. But I see hints of that trend. And by the way, I also see some kids that are like go-getter, hardworking people that
For
we
sure.
would look at with admiration, going, "God, that
And they
kid's gonna do
clearly
something."
stand out.
Yeah,
They clearly stand out.
stand out like
Yeah.
a sore thumb. Yeah. Um, and it's interesting. I was just Meg has an intern at her shop, and I was helping her learn a couple of things with AI. And she's going to school for she's talking about going to school for graphic design. And I had to have this conversation with her about considering the implications of AI and really like thinking through. No, I wasn't trying to talk her out of going to college or anything. It's all her choice, and I don't have enough rapport with her or know her well enough to properly guide her. But it occurred to me, most people, unless you're in this AI bubble and you're actually paying attention to it, most people have no idea how to even consider the implications and how they're guiding their kids going forward on it.
Yeah.
And all I could see when she was saying it is this like 4-year arc of her life where she invests in this whole thing and gets out of it. And she didn't learn a thing about AI, and graphic design is just null and void from like the traditional way of thinking about it. And so like I gave her this download, and it just occurred to me like how much of the parental influence is counter to the actual world influence, because it's emerging too quickly. It goes back to that immune system analogy. Like, it's coming on too fast for the average person to contemplate. And you've got people that are guiding their kids into these bubbles. And I think that's going to just, the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think that's going to reinforce everything that, we just talked about on them kind of valuing their social structure more than anything else, because every other bit of guidance is going to fall up against whatever the implications of AI is very, very quick. I mean, it's already today, but like think about it 2 years from now, going back 2 years from now, like forward that's a 4-year gap. That is a entirely different world.
No doubt.
So
No doubt. I've actually talked recently, and this is just obviously a very small sampling of one person. So it's not like this is a majority of people, but I had a conversation somewhat about that. I can't remember the degree that she's going into right now off the top of my head, but there's a lot of the generation now that are going to college, and it's not even really about what they're studying. They want to have that social connection, and it's like, well, if you look at it from that observation, that kind of sucks, right? That's a lot of money, unless they have a scholarship, of course, right? That's going to pay for that human connection. But the reality is we're a decade into this thing where, a decade ago, people were going to college to learn how to do social media marketing, and they were going to college to learn how to do, this trade or that trade. The reality is that curriculum 10 years ago couldn't be developed and redeveloped quickly enough to then go to print, to then to be distributed, and then to be observed by a professor and then taught to the students, and then them graduate and get job placement all in that same window of time. Yep. Like, we've actually already been to this stage over a decade, and I wouldn't call it majority of trades, but a lot of them. And now that's even becoming more aggressive in terms of, it feels like every trade at some point or another. I mean, people make statements like, HVAC and some of these, plumbers and that sort of thing. But man, there's already so much discussion about even HVAC units, like having modular processes and systems in there with AI, where it's very modular. Like, you can just walk out and pull a module out and put another one right back in, and it would just auto ship to you on what you're changing out. Right. I think we're still probably 10 plus, maybe 5 years away from that kind of idea. But my point of it is that you're completely right. I mean, I don't know if anything is safe in terms of long-term security, truly, that isn't more of a physical trade where you're going out and pouring concrete or that sort of thing, right? I don't think anything is truly safe in terms of if you're pursuing a degree. So it goes back to, there's been a lot of awareness over a decade. It doesn't seem like anything has slowed down in terms of college, kids entering into college. I don't think that's slowed down at all. It seems like the larger universities across the country have only doubled and tripled in people they're receiving in for admissions. And at some point, that whole model and that whole system is going to collapse. It's going to. In fact, so the one thing they're doing in college is, go ahead.
I think within the next couple of years.
Yeah, I don't see how it sustains, right? And especially if we continue down this dialogue of government spend, government waste, and that sort of thing, like how much is that making a difference or not? I would almost argue the net positive difference that it is doing for that generation is coming out of high school, right? Turning 18, whatever, going to college and learning how to communicate effectively with other humans, right? That's not your family, that's not your shell, and really kind of exploring the world and that kind of idea, the diversification, the different cultural environments, all that kind of, tied into that 2 to 4 years or whatever they spend in college, right? I would argue that's actually the net positive, not necessarily the degree in which they obtain. And then you go further north into graduate programs and that sort of thing. Like, even the more advanced you go, it doesn't actually get any better in terms of how much AI truly is already making a profound difference already in some of those medical realms. I mean, I went to, kind of telling myself a little bit, I went to the dentist the other day. AI can already tell when the density of a tooth is starting to weaken well before there's a chip, well before there's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so the fact that, I mean, this is on such a small level, how much AI is making a difference where they can already go ahead and reinforce a tooth before it even begins to become problematic. They can tell that with AI technology. Take that far in advancement with certainly brain surgery and advanced heart surgeries and all that sort of thing, depending on what the graduate program would be. So all that to say but then it goes back to it, Josh, like if Josh, based on Josh's knowledge, which is very deep in this AI realm, and you've done a lot of research and development study, you've executed a lot in different AI programs, you do a lot of vibe coding, love that part about you. But my point of it is, I'm going to pose this question to you. What would you advise someone who's a junior or a senior in college and they're thinking about, like, what would you tell a parent, but then also what would you tell the kid in terms of, hey, what do you want to do now based on that? Like, what would you advise them to do in terms of their next steps of training and development and whatever it is that they would be spending their time in? You can use the graphic design. That's an easy layup, right, on graphic design. But what would you advise parents, and what would you advise these kids that are coming out of high school?
I think right now the only blanket idea that you can lay across that entire spectrum, right? You can get more nuanced in specific industries, but the most specific thing is both parents and students have to absolutely do what they can to consume and understand the implications of AI, because we're in the middle of we're in the middle of a journey.
Yes.
I don't want to paint it like it's a storm. It's not necessarily a storm, but we're in the middle of a journey. And
Yes.
We don't know where we're navigating to.
Exactly.
And the only thing you can do is get more situational awareness to try to make the best decisions that you can. And there's two things that trump everything in it. If I can boil success down to one thing, and that's success in any arena under any definition, if you can understand what's most important and have the right strategy to execute what's most important, you win. Just plain and simple. Like if we break it down into like a sentence or two, that's what all success is. So spending your time identifying what's most important as we're on this navigation and this journey within your, your own bubble of what you're focused on, is really important, because very often what we think is most important is not actually most important. A simple, for instance, on that is, you might think that the most important thing to do is hire a new team member, let's say, or let's take it back to, like, let's not do it in the business context. Let's do it in the parent-kid thing. The most important thing might be to talk to the school counselor to get certain guidance on something, because it's normal, natural, and makes perfect sense as we're talking about academic journeys, where really the most important thing might be to be paying attention to the conversations that are being had on things like the Moonshot podcast and other things, because they're talking about things with a greater implication than a counselor could ever factor. And it just wasn't true even, 5 years ago. Like you'd still be fine on that counselor path 5 years ago. So if you understand those things are being more important, that information becomes huge. And then the second layer to this, I'll tell a quick story on kind of how I came to this, and I'm seeing this becoming more and more of a truth. And you just alluded to it as well. This was maybe 2017. There was some legislation that was up for determination as to whether they were going to put it under law in Germany. And if that had gone through, it would have eliminated the ability for any company to use tracking on the internet for
I remember that.
People, right? So like Facebook Pixel would be null and void, Google Analytics null and void. It would have been illegal across the board. And I go, well, what does a marketer do if they can't leverage that technology? And I promise this relates back to the parent.
No, it's good.
Thing. So what would a marketer do in that case? And like, I spent some time thinking about that, as I often do. I'll do these deep dive kind of, meditations over a week or something, of like picking apart all the nuances. And I said, there's really only two things that are going to win. If there's always a place where people are congregating. The only place to win out without an extra lever to sort that out is who can communicate the best through the most consumed medium at any given time. And what that meant was who can tell the best stories or influence the best from video.
Who can resonate the best.
Yeah. If you can make a good video, you can strike a chord with any group or audience, as long as you can put it in front of them without any extra levers. So the reason I tell the story is that the most important thing, and this is what you alluded to as well, in any society that's moving forward, particularly where information is so instantly accessible, communication with other people and knowing how to communicate, have emotional resonance and influence, is going to be a currency that is going to become very scarce, and a few people are going to win, and
100%.
other people are just going to be like, you're either going to influence or be influenced. And that's always been true, but it's going to cascade to that, because you're going to have a lot of people who think they have all the right information, but they don't understand the actual emotional and physiological implications of that information and how to affect that in the world. That requires somebody who can help you understand it at a different level. Maybe AI gets there, but your ability to communicate with other people is your ability to actually impact your world. And I think that's a baseline skill. If you're not acquiring that, I don't want to say you're in trouble, but like, you're definitely at a disadvantage.
Man, I could not agree more. I would actually expand that even to small businesses and companies on the business side. I truly feel like the companies that are much more relationally driven in this new era are going to stand out in such a big way. Like, imagine being able to pick up your phone and call a number and a human picks up, right? First call, right? First two rings. Like, that
and
feels like a cheat code.
To you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, because, so let me back off that rabbit hole for a moment. I completely agree with you. And it's like, I remember, I'm 37. So whenever I was a teenager, I was being told from people like, hey, you need to learn how to sell. If you get good at sales, you'll be good. And they were implying the same thing you're implying here. It was just on more of a surface level. And of course, my, Brad's 16, 17-year-old brain was like, ooh, sales. Like, the only thing I can remember is how everyone else talked about car salesmen, right? That's the only thing, perception wise. My perception was completely different about sales. But you're 100% correct. And I think if you were to try to logically explain it and convey it, I think it's how can someone, no matter what their age, how can they develop emotional intelligence? And how can, I don't know how you train confidence, but confidence is a big part of that emotional intelligence factor. It's easier for us now in our age, and not just age. Age is not the deal. It's the experience we've had.
Yeah.
And I would almost state that, I would actually emphatically state that personal development by far will take anyone that's either a kid coming out of high school trying to figure out what are my next steps, what's my next path look like, or anyone for that matter that's concerned about AI taking over their job or taking over their environment, or all the different things they're hearing, listening, absorbing, and even if they're listening to us talk about all this. At the end of the day, personal development, when I say personal development, I really mean developing in your emotional intelligence, developing in your communication, really self-defining what means the most to you, what brings you joy, what fills your cup, and then finding that path forward and how you can continue to do that. But while also understanding that this is a give and take world, and the things you deposit seeds wise, when you deposit seeds, and I don't just mean financial seeds, I mean just being a good human, if we're being honest. Yeah, just being a good human. So that fundamentally will have a much higher currency, certainly in this new era, than anything else, and probably much so like the good old days, or whatever they used to talk about when technology wasn't such a variable factor. Possibly returning to those kind of value of days where a relationship means a lot more. At the end of the day, there's such a race, since we're talking more on like futuristic outcomes for young people, but then across the board, there is such a race. AI is such a buzzword. All of these companies and corporations and leaders are trying to jump on anything that's got the letters AI on it right now, because they don't want to lose. And I would look at that and say, while companies need to be investing time and attention absolutely to AI, it's like, I've always been a believer, Josh, in what's the low-hanging fruit that everyone's ignoring that's almost hidden in plain sight. And I really hope, and I think our company will do well in this. I'm going to say that from a perspective of, we're so relationally driven that as long as we can check the boxes still from an AI perspective, if we help coach and consult companies to lean heavier once again into being relationally driven, and say that may not be from a marketing perspective, although that's the foundation part of it. What are you conveying, right? But that absolutely, I think, are the biggest, most foundational skills. If people can, if those in the society that can really develop personal development, emotional intelligence, they can communicate well, and they also mean it, and they're a good human, that feels like a low standard. I'm telling you, that standard is going to stand out in this new era in such a big way, in my opinion. And I think the same thing for nonprofits, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and then all the way up to enterprise. I think companies, we've been tokenizing it as humanizing the brand for the last decade. I think that's going to continue to become a bigger currency in the days and years ahead. That's my opinion. That's my projection.
100% agree. And I think what you're going to see emerge, because it's already been emerging, you're going to see relational markets and transactional markets.
Yes.
And it's going to be really hard to win in a transactional market, because what you have is you have a market that's not based on it's only based on intrinsic value, not actual value. So like, fine, I can order something on Amazon, I get it quick, problem, solution, solved, one and done. I don't need to have a relational conversation with the the company that I just bought a new vacuum cleaner from or something, right? However, the question that you need to be asking is, what would happen if you did?
Yes.
And that's like when we become super transactional, fine, some parts of our lives are always going to be transactional. And going forward through life, you have to have some of that. Like, I don't have time to deal with that. I just need it done. Perfect. But an easy way to, maybe here's another way to organize this thought. The most profound experiences you'll ever have in your life, 90+% of them are going to be because of somebody that understood how to communicate and be relational instead of transactional.
Yep.
So one of the like real thought experiments that I do almost daily is, if I want to understand the value of something, make it disappear. So if you really want to get down to that, like how valuable is the understanding that type of communication, just imagine a world that doesn't have it. Like every bit of it that you found meaningful, you found insightful, that you found motivational, or that opened a new perspective. Imagine it's all gone and it's all transactional. You can't imagine it for real because it doesn't exist, but like you can infer some things and you can go, wow, the value of that is actually far higher than the transactional. And fine, you could like have a more nuanced argument and say, well, that depends where you're at on the hierarchy of needs. Like if you're in survival mode, transaction is all that matters.
Yeah.
But is it? Right? Like I mean, and I mean that as a real, like, well, is it? Like, sure, you need food, but like just finding your next meal isn't a life that's overly exciting to live either. Finding your next meal and having a good conversation with somebody infinitely changes the experience. So like even on a threshold of that where you can go, well, fine, like outright survival, but how do humans go to survive then? If like, let's take it bare bones. What do humans use to survive if they need to? You see it at the baseline. Somebody who's homeless. If you've ever been to a big city, you've ran across somebody who's homeless. What do? They try to relate and appeal to the people around them as best they know how. Some of them are better than other people. To get what they want, they have to go find another person to get it. So the better you are at communicating with another person, AI, maybe if this micro nanobot thing works, maybe AI can feed you, and that'll be a really interesting world and awesome. There's some meals that I will definitely plant in the ground. But aside from that sort of like Star Trek type future, it is the number one currency that anybody can develop. And the one thing I want to make sure, if anybody does listen to this, that they know and understand how you communicate right now is not who you are. If you're one of those people that are not good at communication, if you're shy, if you're introverted, that's not a statement of who you are. That's just how you're experiencing yourself.
Yeah.
Trust me, as the shy, weird kid, you can figure out communication. You can have it impact your world. There is no barriers to this. It's just learned skill. It's a physiology. It's not a mental construct. So that's the open door for everybody, but no matter what we're doing in life. So
yeah, no matter what age.
And by the way, it's also required for you to tap into your own spiritual existence beyond your own psychological existence. Self-talk, how you create relationships with others is how you create it with yourself. So it just universally lifts everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Dude, we've been at it for like 2 hours.
I've enjoyed my conversation with you.
Yeah, likewise. I miss chatting with you. I keep thinking back to you, Benji, and I sitting upstairs in that hotel at Fort Lauderdale at like 3 a.m, asking ChatGPT the most ridiculous things to try to get it to like say something. I mean, it was like,
it was becoming annoying.
Life, that was one of my like schoolboy moments, right? Like we were just like, let's see if we can get it to say something stupid. I miss spending time with you and chit chatting. So this was great.
I think, Josh, we're probably very much alike when that working genius model. We're probably very strong W's and I's. Wandering and inventing, rabbit holing, talking through, collaborating. thinking very deeply, and then what that might look like from an execution perspective. But otherwise, going back to dreaming again and talking about the future again. I've always enjoyed those conversations with you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on and chit chat, and it's good to reconnect. And I know we didn't talk about anything too personal with what's going on in real life or anything. And obviously, I always hope you're doing well. And you're always somewhere in the background of my thoughts, even if I'm not reaching out or anything. So as
all
always,
good, man.
Dude, you need anything from me, you just let me know, and I'll do my best to help in any way that I can. So
same here, man. I know you've been working on some really exciting projects behind the scenes, so I look forward to. I'm always interested to know what Josh is cooking up behind the scenes. So
it's truly been a throttling back over the last year for sure, but I could probably stretch that to 2 years on a lot of things. But I definitely have some stuff that I'm doing that's exciting and interesting. And the 2mm shift thing, you're actually helping me inadvertently with what we're doing on this, because a decade from now, this will be what I'm most known for, right? This is my 10-year arc of build presence and books. I've already got books started. I've got one book started, 2 more ideas, another one outlined, but author, speaker, coach, that sort of stuff. The coaching program I've developed is out of this world. It's the coolest thing that I've seen, and I'm happy because I've layered like so many different things, from spirituality to neurobiology to speech patterns and practices and my own takes on things that I find to be quite powerful. So lots of cool stuff coming on 2mm shift side.
Well, man, it was a privilege to be on. I think you said the first podcast officially for 2mm shift.
The first one that I'm calling the 2mm shift podcast. Yeah.
The pilot. Cool, man.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting a decade from now how wrong we both were about so much of this context.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, we can go back to this recording and be like, wow, that was like the dumbest thing I've ever said, apparently. Like, good thing I didn't put money on that.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you as always. We'll kill it here. If you guys liked it, man, like, just comment or like you guys know how to do the stuff if you like things. I don't want to be that guy that's begging for stuff. So if you didn't like it, fine. You can tell me too. I'll probably ignore you, but all good. Take care, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, man. Take care.